So some interesting developments in recent months for fans of Francis Ford Coppola's legendary crime saga, the Godfather trilogy, among perhaps the very best films ever made. Well, the first two at least. The first bit of news, as I mentioned in a previous video, is that at the end of this year, Coppola is releasing a new version of The Godfather Part 3, which will be called The Godfather Coda: The Death of Michael Corleone, which will be a re-edited movie with features such as a new opening and reworked scenes. I also shared some details in a different video about works that were being put in place for a TV series on the making of the first Godfather movie. It wasn't really clear whether this would be a documentary or a live-action recreation of the making of the movie, but what we did know was that it was proposed to be a 10-part miniseries. Well, it looks as though now, unless bizarrely there's two projects out there doing the same thing, the plans for a making of the Godfather TV series have been scrapped or reworked and replaced with a new movie showing how Coppola's famous film was put together. The film will be directed by Oscar-winning director Barry Levinson, the director of Rain Man, Good Morning Vietnam, Sleepers, the gangster drama Bugsy, and Wag the Dog. Another movie about making a movie, sort of. There was another movie about making movies that Levinson did called What Just Happened, which was not as popular as some of his earlier works. Levinson has made some good movies. He's a very competent director, not too flashy, and a fair few of his films will continue to be talked about years to come. He's kind of faded away in recent years though, as the kind of character-orientated movies he makes don't really get made in mainstream Hollywood these days. When you look at some of the stuff he said about Hollywood, he comes off as frustrated and jaded, like when he said, "It gets harder and harder to make movies about human beings. These movies are like an endangered species. Everything is simplify now. How many movies have subplots anymore?" Or when he said, "We're talking about a very strange time, to be honest. Writing by committee becomes much less about a vision. It is really about a piece of merchandise. We excuse movies like Independence Day that really lack logic and say, it doesn't make any sense, but it's a ride. I thought a movie was a movie, and a ride was a ride." So it's very interesting that Levinson, given his stance on modern day Hollywood, is going to be making a movie centered around what many consider to be the peak of Hollywood. Recently, Levinson has found a bit of minor success on the small screen with TV movies like Paterno and The Wizard of Lies, with veteran actors such as Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, both of which I've reviewed on the channel if you're interested. The movie currently has the official title of Francis and the Godfather, nothing too subtle about that, and it's based on a script written by Andrew Farote. The cast suggests that this is not going to be a typical modern Levinson film that fades away to TV and few actually see, as the movie will star Jake Gyllenhaal as former head of Paramount Pictures Robert Evans, who died last year, and Coppola himself will be played by Oscar Isaac. We're likely to see the two actors butting heads in the film regularly, as the making of The Godfather is just as legendary as the film itself. Levinson said of the project, "Out of the madness of production, and against all odds, a classic film happened." And Coppola said of the upcoming film, "Any movie that Barry Levinson makes about anything will be interesting and worthwhile." Mike Marcus, one of the producers of the upcoming film, said, "Here was a young man who lived outside the system, and every step of the way the system was telling him, you can't do that. But Francis never gave up on his vision, and the result speaks for itself." This project has the potential to be a really good movie, because it's unlikely the film is going to be simply cashing in on the name of one of the most famous IPs around, because there's many juicy behind-the-scenes stories and sagas the film could cover. For example, Coppola fought with Evans and Paramount to film the movie expensively in New York. He fought with the studio over the casting of Al Pacino, who the studio hated in the role of Michael Corleone, and he was in a very real danger of getting fired. The only reason he wasn't being the adamant willpower of Coppola, who threatened to resign if Pacino was sacked. Even the casting of the legendary Marlon Brando was much debated, as he was known as an eccentric and hadn't had a hit in years. Even Robert Evans himself had pressure of his own, as he had the job of producer off the back of a career as an actor, and there was always the ever-present danger that the studio was going to shut down production. It was a very turbulent shoot, made all the more dangerous with the presence and influence of real-life gangsters. The guy who played Luca Brasi, for instance, was a real mobster who landed a role in the production of the movie, and there are reports of numerous mafia figures around set, having small roles in the film to add authenticity or to help get the cast into character better. One of these mobsters, who allegedly met with Marlon Brando personally in his trailer, was crime boss Russell Bufalino, who Joe Pesci played in Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. I'm not sure if the movie will cover this, as it seems focused on Coppola and Evans, but the mob influence goes even further, and the mob initially threatened to stall and shut down production through union protests and such, and film producer Al Roddy was summoned to a meeting with mob boss Joe Colombo, who made demands of the script, such as the word mafia being removed. It was only after Colombo approved of the script that the mob went from hurting production to helping it, and you can find out more in a video I made called Russell Bufalino Had Script Approval Over the Best Gangster Film Ever Made. There's so much other stuff too, like Gianni Russo, the guy who played Carlo, and Al Martino, who played Johnny Fontaine, having real-life mob connections and using their friends in low places to secure roles in the movie. In fact, now that I think of it, the making of The Godfather, the most famous mob film ever made, could be a mob movie in of itself. The two actors cast are capable of giving adept performances. Gyllenhaal's a great actor, and Isaac's done well in the little I've seen of him. It's actually kind of funny because whenever you look at discussions on who could play a young Al Pacino in a potential Godfather movie where there are flashbacks to Michael Corleone's younger days, Isaac's name usually pops up, and here he is cast in the making of the legendary crime picture, but playing Coppola instead of Pacino. And speaking of which, I imagine we're going to see some scenes with the actors in the film, so it's going to be interesting to see who they get to play guys like Brando, Pacino, James Caan and Robert Duvall. But I imagine there won't be too much focus on the actors and the filming, much as we might want it, because reports suggest the film is primarily focused on the clashes between director and producer. Just out of interest, Ben Affleck is making a similar movie, but one for the making of Roman Polanski's Chinatown with Jack Nicholson, and David Fincher is doing a film with Gary Oldman about the making of the classic Citizen Kane. Maybe Hollywood is that much out of ideas that the next trend is the industry making movies about the making of their own movies. Okay, so just a quick update. While I was making this video, I came across news that this movie is not, in fact, the same as the 10-part TV limited series on the making of The Godfather called The Offer. That project is still going ahead and will be focused on Al Roddy's time producing the film. So we have in fact 2 projects on the making of The Godfather going into production. So what do you think about this project? Are you looking forward to it? Who do you want to see cast in the roles of the cast? That should be really fun. I imagine it will mainly be a bunch of lesser known actors who do good impersonations, but it would be hilariously meta if, say, they got Robert De Niro to play someone like Brando, who played his character in Godfather Part 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more videos, and thanks for watching.